Hi, and welcome to today's Art Matters Talk with three of the artists exhibiting in the Bug Invitational. I'm Kristen Butler, Director of Programs here at the Delaplane Art Center. Before I hand things over to our exhibitions manager, Corey Fry, I wanted to mention that if you enjoy our programs, exhibitions, classes, and workshops, consider supporting us by becoming a member. Members get a lot of great benefits, including discounts on classes and workshops. You can find more information on our website. And now, Delaplane Exhibitions Manager, Corey Fry.
I'm really excited about our talk with three of the artists from the Bug Invitational exhibition. The Bug Invitational is an exhibition that was going to coincide with our gala. That was postponed, but we decided to go through with the exhibition, and it features insect-inspired artworks made by a selection of local and regional artists, marking the spring 2021 emergence of the 17-year cicadas. So we have quite a variety of fun, thought-provoking work that we'd love for you to come and check out. I want to remind you that our hours of operation to come into the Delaplane are Monday through Saturday from 9 to 5 and Sunday from 11 to 5. So come on out, check out the exhibitions. We have another brand new exhibition that opens up today with the Catoctin Forest Alliance. That's a great show, and that's up on our second floor. If you're unable to make it out, if you're viewing from a distance, or you're still quarantining or just trying to remain safe and not going out, we have provided links to virtual exhibitions of all of the work shown at the Delaplane. So right now, there's a virtual exhibition up of the Catoctin Forest Alliance, and you can see a overview of the Bug Invitational. Later this week, there'll be more details added on to the Bug Invitational, so you can see some up close shots of all the work. But some great artists showing work this month, and we're really excited about our programs. I want to give a quick shout out to the curator of the Bug Invitational, Sydney Dexter. Sydney collaborated with all the artists and brought all the artists together for the Bug Invitational, and we've got a great show for you. So without further ado, I want us to first talk with our first artist. Eric Stavali is a nature macro photographer based out of Frederick, Maryland, focusing primarily on the smallest nature has to offer, from insects to spiders to various vertebrates. He shot all over the world, from Panama to Liberia, and has had work displayed throughout galleries and businesses throughout the Frederick area since 2016. He resides in East Frederick with his wife and two daughters, all of whom are into flipping rocks and leaves over just like he is. Eric, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Corey. Thank you very much for the invitation to show some of my photography and artwork. This is a hobby of mine that I love sharing with other people, because it's a side of nature that people rarely get to see or appreciate. Most of this stuff is right under your nose, and you never know unless you really get close, look through a big lens, or just sit still for a while. So, of course, my first shot here, I have to show this emerging cicada, since this is one of the big themes of this Bug Invitational, and this is actually taken in Panama. I'm going to touch a little bit on the photography themselves, but also for any photographers that might be watching, or anyone who's interested in shooting macro, I'll share a few tips on how some of these how I get some of these photographs. And then, obviously feel free to email me or reach me on Instagram if, I do, one-on-one sessions, group sessions, and, just an instruction just over the phone. So with that, I will move into this. I guess I can start with this photo here. So, the key with macro is I generally shoot with a Nikon system. The macro is defined as anything that has a 1-to-1 reproduction ratio, but a lot of times you want to get a little bit closer. So you might have extension tubes on your lens, a close-up filter. The key to macro, in my opinion, everything is manual focus, because a lot of your cameras that are autofocus won't autofocus this close, and also having very soft external flash, either whether it's on your camera or handheld, for example, here, I think I had my headlamp held behind the animal, and then a light flash on my camera to kind of illuminate the front of the animal. So, and that allowed you to see some of the definition in the wings there. A lot of my photography is local. Most of it's local. One of my favorite spots in Maryland, at least in this area, is the Monocacy Aqueduct. So you'll see a lot of photography that's up in the gallery right now is from the Monocacy Aqueduct. And like Corey said, I do go out with my girls. A lot of this was taken before I had girls, but now they're getting into it as much as I do, and they frankly have better eyes than I do, so they can pick out this stuff much easier. Something as simple as this caterpillar on the left, it's just happened to pop out of our blueberry bag from Frog Eye Farms. We just put the blueberry on a toothpick that my wife held for me and have a couple flashes, soft flashes with diffusers pointing towards the animal, and then just start shooting and let it do what it does. On the right, this is something that I'm sure most of you have never seen before. This is called a gnat ogre, and it's a robber fly. It's a small predator, and the reason you've probably never seen it before is because it's only a few millimeters in size, so you would think it's a gnat. And really, this is sitting on what you could say is a stalk of grass at the aqueduct. They fly about knee to ankle height, and they're extremely small. I recognize them because of the way they fly, and I'll just sit down and wait for them to land like they do here. And they just sit and kind of just wait for something to come along. But they're really easy to shoot if you have the right gear, because they'll sit still for you for a while, which is really difficult with a lot of other subjects. Another key with macro here is with your flash, it's a soft flash, otherwise you'll blow the animal out and probably blind it, but also it freezes the action on the photo. So even if it's a little bit of a windy day, which it may have been here, a quick flash, 1 to 5,000 or so, 1 to 10,000, depending on the conditions, will allow the action to be frozen and allow you to have a tack sharp photo. I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel with my job. This was actually a leisure trip to Panama a while back. This is the Cocobola Nature Reserve. A couple different photography techniques here. Obviously, the one on the upper left, just sitting in a plant. This is a jumping spider, which I'm sure you've seen. Maybe not this one because this one's in Panama, but similar jumping spiders around. They're really fun to shoot because they will sit and stare at you, and they'll stare at your reflection, their reflection in the lens, and sometimes they'll jump towards their reflection, thinking they're probably a mate or a foe. But they're really curious, and they'll sit and look at you. So this is just a flash that was mounted on my camera. And you can, if you have an external flash and you kind of hold it over the subject, you can kind of think of it as like a cloudy day is what you want to simulate with your diffuse flash on top of your subject. And then you can get some of the background illuminated, and as well as some of the front of the subject there. On the right, this is a technique that you can set up a field studio. This is called a white box, and this is really having a couple different flashes. One flash blows out the background. If you have a white background, then you set your camera settings to blow it out so you get complete white like this, and then you have another soft flash on your camera, and you focus on the subject, and then you have your flash on the camera illuminated or set to a way to highlight your subject, and then your secondary flash in the background blows out the background. And if you guys are familiar with a project that is around the country, it's called Meet Your Neighbors. This is a technique in the Meet Your Neighbors project, and people from all over the country, all over the world, shooting subjects, small subjects, animals in their backyards, wherever in nature. And this is this type of technique is used commonly there. Bottom left, sometimes things don't work out the way you want it to go, and you end up the really metallic blue mosquito you want to take a picture of ends up biting you instead. So you're just taking pictures of. That's a technique too. Get it to bite you. This next photo here, this is another studio technique that I use. I was in Liberia for a month back in 2015, 16, a couple months, and I set up a little studio in my hotel room. And so just with the materials that I had, but I would go outside, grab things, bring them in, spend my, my lonely days shooting subjects, and then I'd release them back outside. So guess one thing on that to note is that you might hear a lot of macro photographers, they put things in the freezer, they pin them, et cetera, but this is all, unharmed, unmanipulated subjects and everything is released, when I'm done. So it requires a tremendous amount of patience because a lot of times things don't want to stop and look at you and let you take their portraits. So actually one of the techniques I used here was I had a small cake turntable that I had packed in my suitcase. And so part of the studio setup is when the subject was walking around, I could just turn the cake turntable and it'd be facing me. And all you need is one shot. So this may have taken an hour, 45 minutes to shoot, but just needed a couple shots. This shot has been in a couple of entomology magazines and in a new wasp book that was just put out by Eric Eaton. That's I hopefully get a copy of soon. Last, I want to talk about some other type of photography. You don't need a big DSLR Nikon system in order to do photography. Last year, I really started dabbling in macro on my cell phone. So these are cell phone shots of macro. I did get a little attachment. This happens to be a Moment lens, which is a little macro lens. It's just attached to my camera. I also got a little LED light that you can turn the light from warm, different temperatures from very warm to much cooler with the LEDs that are in the system. But it's a little credit card size LED light I just put in my pocket. And then with this subject on the left, this is another Nat Ogre, the Antheminoxy Aqueduct. This is a cell phone photo I just illuminated with just this little pocket LED. This isn't a tack sharp photo. It's a cell phone shot. It was breezy, but it was good enough for me to, take the shot. And it was one of my favorite shots that I took last year. The best camera is always going to be the one that you have on you. And so, lugging around a DSLR system or some system that you need multiple flashes, you're going to miss a lot. And so I'm really pleased with some of the photography that I've been able to get with a cell phone. Flowers in the middle, and then this fly on the right. I think they're great photos. They may not blow up well to 16 by 24 as you see in the gallery, but I'm very, very pleased with them. And then finally, I did start with macro photography. I have tried wildlife photography as well. This is a cottonmouth I took down in North Carolina. I happened to be toting my camera around on a bicycle and almost ran it over, but a neat shot. And then I've some wildlife photography like these ducks here, this duck here on the bottom right. I actually ventured into this type of photography and then went right back to macro photography because that's really why I got into photography in the first place. And I think that's where I'm gonna keep heading. So with that, I hope you enjoy the photography that's up in the gallery. I have said stuff at the Delaplane before and around Frederick. So, please feel free to reach out if you're interested in prints or you like some tips on how to do some of this photography, and I'd be more than happy to give you a hand. All right, thanks a bunch, Corey.
Eric, thanks so much. Oh, it's really fascinating. I love macro photography because you're getting to see things that you just don't pay attention to most of the time.
Exactly.
It opens up a world within our world in such a crazy way. Thank you so much. All right, next up is Virginia Sperry. Virginia is a sculptor, photographer, mixed media artist who lives in Carroll County, Maryland. She has exhibited at the Delaplane several times, the most recent being her show in 2019 of sculpture and photography titled Impermanence. Throughout her artistic career, she's jumped from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions and back again. From the physical movements of dance to the texture of watercolor, from the three-dimensional forms of polymer clay, steel, and fiber, to the otherworldly photographs, Virginia creates physical and sensorial experiences for the viewer. Virginia is an artist, member of Noma Gallery in Frederick. She lives with her husband and 2 grumpy cats on 6 acres that throughout the years has become a sculpture garden for her life-size steel animals and is open to the public twice a year in non-COVID times. Virginia, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure, Corey. Thanks for inviting me. I'm going to start with just showing off my website a little bit for the people who don't know me. This is my website. I do a lot of different stuff. I do paper collages, installations, abstractions, photography. I also do macro photography, but most of my subjects don't move. And you'll find all these animals at my sculpture garden if you come by at any point. This guy is actually in Piney Run Park right now, and it should be up. It comes down in the winter, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on all of that. So in any case, that's my website. So you're welcome to go to that. Let's get to the slugs. It's a short story. And you're probably wondering why I decided to make it a story in the first place, but it did start in the library. Sydney had asked me to be part of the library show that the Delaplane does with the local public libraries. And so the first one was at New Brunswick, and I was looking around to see where I could put artwork. And, there was the space that many people have used. So I spent an afternoon sitting in a chair with my sketch pad, looking at this one space thinking, ugh, that's like really long and thin. And it's 5 feet high by 20 feet long. And so then I started sketching. I made a rectangle that was like that size, and I started sketching. And as you can see, I mean, this is literally pretty much all that I sketched. There may have been a couple before the lips, but anyway. And looking at it again now, it's almost like biology where those cells, sort of separate and reproduce and stuff. It's kind of cool actually to see the whole process in my brain. But this was the final idea that I had, was a whole bunch of slugs for the wall in the kids section. So I had actually done this shape before, and I had failed at it. I had failed at the choices of how I wove it and the colors and all of that. The people's reaction was, well, what is it? So I was excited to go back to this shape and actually make it into something. And you can see on the floor, the chalk marks that I used to be the guide for when I actually bend the wire, well, the steel wire, the steel rods. And so all of that is welded. And then there's the first one in my studio. And as I have said before, I tend not to do things simply, that if there's a chance that I can do more than one thing at a time, then I'm going to do that, even if it kills me a little bit. So this was the state of my studio at the time, because I was working on another project for Noma Gallery in Frederick, which was an installation of yarn, a lot of yarn, really way too much yarn. That was the installation. And so along with that, I also, here's my macro photography with yarn, which does not crawl under a sofa, which is real. Actually, it can disappear. And sometimes it travels back to the house with me on whatever I'm wearing. And then I also had macro photography at the library. So I had basically 4 projects I was doing at once. So back to the slugs, I had 3 slugs. I was working on the largest of them, and thought that maybe I should check it out to see how it works. And so I asked one of the librarians to hold it up for me. And I'm remembering the librarians when I was growing up, and they did not look at all like she did. I think that's so cool. I love it that she has pink hair. So she's helping me, and I realized that yes, indeed, the size is correct, but I need more. So I made a 4th one, and then I realized that I needed one more. So I made 5 total, even though the original sketch had only 4 slugs in it. So this is me putting the tape measure in my studio and figuring out where the heck everything is going to go. And will it all fit, and will it look like it's all climbing all over the place? I really wanted a feeling like the slugs were really crawling from somewhere to somewhere. I didn't want to just make them feel like they were hanging on the wall. And so we had to install and put them up, and they looked so awesome. And I was really happy with them. And the next day, the library closed because of COVID, and nobody saw this exhibition. And I think it was three to 4 months later, I took it down. And the only people who saw it were the librarians, which was super frustrating and super sad. And so I was thrilled when Sydney said, well, you know, you got to put them in the bug show. So it gave me another chance to put them up. Hopefully people will come see them this time, even though we're still in a rocky COVID kind of time. But I was showing Corey, you know, how they could go up on the wall. And I am so thrilled with the way they look on this huge wall. I love that they have translated from the place that I designed them for to this wall. And by the way, if you get a chance to go, the other artwork in the place is just amazing. It really is. And so that's pretty much the end of the slug thing, except to say that I don't have a love affair with actual slugs. So I'm not quite sure what the reasoning was for me to go with this beyond the fact that it was the shape that I really wanted to do. I have stepped on enough slugs with bare feet that I really have no desire to ever do that again. And they are the reason why I can't have petunias, because they love petunias. So, but you know, they are kind of cool, and how they move just sort of, it's magic. It's just totally magic. And yeah, there's a link also in the chat to the video that was made about the show at the library, so you can see more of it in process. And that's all I'll say.
It's fantastic, Virginia. I love how you captured slug's movement somehow in like I mean, the crazy thing to me is that you also broke them down into like these geometric shapes, I guess because of the steel construction underneath. And so like simplifying them in that way, but still capturing the movement of them is a real feat. So I love these slugs. They're fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Movement is something that I don't have a problem recreating. So obviously I managed to do that somehow, but I think it's, you know, it's that undulation that is, it's cool.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Well, thanks so much for sharing. Let's bring up our last presenter today, who is artist Brian Reed. So Brian Michael Reed grew up in the hills of Appalachia on his family's cattle farm in West Virginia. A conceptual multimedia artist, he draws his creative energy from his study of global religions, mythology, and art, in addition to a wide variety of cultural experiences, including residencies in Mexico, Japan, and China. Reed's most recent solo exhibition, In the Cross Current at the Huntington Museum of Art, was the second part of a project begun in 2017, where Reed exhibited multimedia artwork in dialogue with the Huntington's contemporary collection. Reed studied with African and Afro-American scholar Robert Ferris Thompson at Yale University in the History of Art department, and earned a BA and BFA in painting and art history from James Madison University. He's received awards from West Virginia Division of Culture and the West Virginia Allied Artists Association. He divides his time between studios in Shanghai, New York City, and Ivydale, West Virginia. Brian, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, Corey, and I'd like to thank the panel and the Delaplane Art Center for the invitation to share some of my works related to insects. And I would first like to talk about how the insects began in my mind. So part of my work, I was always interested in traveling as a child, looking at culture. And I thought about being an archaeologist or an anthropologist, and art found me along the way and became my way of communicating. So now I call myself a pictorial anthropologist. And I go and I live in communities, immerse myself, and try as a foreigner to see things maybe a little bit different than local people would, and try to find meaning in my everyday life and make work about it. And I hope at the end, when I share, that it could create a dialogue, so that people who I've made art about, their area or a specific craft that they do can have a different perspective. So this was a residency I did in China, and it's a village in Shaanxi province called Sichuan. And I had been working in China looking at the question of, what does the lotus mean to you? The lotus, you know, as a white guy going to other places, like I would need some way to ask questions in a way to understand culture, and I was very careful and thinking about, like, how can I start a dialogue with friends and community members in the different places I would visit in China. And I thought, well, lotus is an idea that could go in many directions. So I would ask people, like, what does the lotus mean to you? And as I would begin this communication, I thought about the environment, like thought, well, the lotus grows in dirty water. It's a metaphor um, that you start in the mud, push your way up through the dirty water, and then you reach into the sky, and you're pure, and you bloom, and you're beautiful. And I thought, well, this is a great metaphor, but I also wanted to examine, like, what's in the mud or what flies above the water. And this is where I created a series called The Red Mist. And it stems from an experience I had in China where I was sitting on a Ming Dynasty bridge in the middle of a lake. It had filled up, and there was you had to get to a boat, take a boat to this bridge. And at sunset, at one day, I guess all the dragonflies had emerged, and they were swarming and breeding and flying around me. And I was in this red mist. And one of the projects that I was tasked with was looking at traditional woodblock printing in China. So I said, I'm traveling to this village, and I don't have a press or any way to print how I would either do lino block or wood block in the ways that I would do. So I decided to think about, like, stamping and thinking about cutting the legs, the wings, parts of the body up so that it was easy to transport. It was accessible as I'm teaching with students, and so that they could participate and you could create lots of variation. So I essentially would make tools that I could use. And a lot of the interesting thing, as you saw, like, participating with in this particular project with a lot of young people, and they had living in this village where you had structures that were over 1,000 years old, and they would see paintings, or you would see the layers of prints that had been glued on the walls, and they really didn't know about it. And so this is what inspired me to think about printmaking and teaching them, like, a reference, or just having a relationship, being able to show a relationship and teaching the techniques in a contemporary way in which that they could access it during my project. So just, I kind of think that that's a great context. This is the host family, the project. There are a couple other artists that were invited to do projects, and so the host in had asked me could I do a mural in his garden, and we would have dinners there with the dragonflies flying around. These are some of the works that are in the gallery, and so these are obviously, you saw like what I would call my field research. And when you're in the field, you often, like, there's a lot of creative accidents, because sometimes you don't, in this particular place, like it was hard to find a table. So like I'm printing on like stone, or like trying to find a saw, or like just different tools. You have these happy accidents. And so gathered all this knowledge, and during the COVID pandemic, I couldn't, obviously I was in New York. I couldn't get back to China. It was blocked. And so I was in my farm, in my family's farm in West Virginia, and part of the inspiration for me there were the frogs, the insects, the birds. Nature played a big role in helping me to create and be inspired during COVID. So I'm thinking, well, I'm in a red mist in COVID, right? Like, but I was thinking, how could I revamp and expand this idea for the Bug Invitational and for the 7-year cicada? So I thought I would try different techniques where I would take groupings of insects, or I would find a singular insect and think about abstracting the shapes. A lot of times these shapes were inspired by things from the children that helped me in China, where, you know, like how they would create an insect, and that was a source of inspiration in my own designs. I'm thinking, and then here's, we've had groupings to singular to a swarm, back to like within the red mist. And so I wanted to be able to exhibit just different variations, and using wood block and lino block printing techniques. And when Corey, you know, we were talking about what to create, I thought, like, what would I like to see after COVID? Like, what would I like to like find as summer and spring come around? So I created hydrangeas and butterflies as kind of like my vision of what I would love to experience in the coming year, and getting out of the red mist. And that we've, you know, it's been difficult. So that these are some of the pictures within the gallery. And I was hoping that we could run a workshop on like printmaking and how to create tools in your home to do printmaking at home. So we decided to display some of the prints, like how you would in your studio hang prints up to see, and that was part of the display process. So yeah, as I was saying, like I thought about the environment under the water. So like I created crawfish in with these neon lights, like they, you know, because they're dark, they're in the mud, so neon like shows at night. And part of the series, I really like in my practice exploring different mediums. I was trained as an oil painter, and I've moved into a lot of other things since then, and I like creating environments. So in this work, it's a 17-meter oil painting about lotus and like a pond, and then I recreated the pond on the floor with sand and coal and ceramics. and neon lights as lotus. And I do performance art as well. So these are other representations of the dragonflies that are done by hand, like watercolor, more like the butterfly series, or the butterfly painting, which is also on display. Here's a better picture of those. So I love insects and finding something very tiny and finding meaning within that small environment, and like showing people the meaning around them, that, you know, wherever you look, you can tell a story or find something that's really cool and expand upon it. These are my lotus lobster firework series, and I actually it would dip the crawfish in ink and let them crawl around on the paper, and they would be like my paintbrushes, helping with the mark making, and I use lotus root to explode, so it's kind of relates to the environment. These are making lotus leaves on the lake, and it's a dedicated to the experience of memory, how I would take the lotus root as a stamp, and as the ink process on shred paper moves around a lot, it's sort of like memory. Sometimes the memory is exact, sometimes it's a little fuzzy, and sometimes it's lost altogether. Yeah, these are just examples of thinking about the environment, doing landscape paintings. These are like aerial views of like mist around a mountain or a lake. These are actual lotus pods. It's called Lotus Message, where I recorded, as I mentioned earlier, people, what their response was, what does the lotus mean to them? So I would write it in calligraphy and make a calligraphy ball and put it inside the lotus pod. So each one of the lotus pod contains a different meaning of how people thought like the lotus would mean to them. And finally, this is kind of the red mist performance. And so this is one of my works. It's the Red Mist Mountain. So you can see on the upper left a mist line of red dragonflies flying on this mountain. And we actually embroidered the costumes, these cloaked costumes, and as the performance, they would move around really slow as like mist, and the audience was able to walk through them, and we had a little choreographed performance. And part of that I performed, it's the metamorphosis from the dragonfly lives in the dirty water, and it comes out. So this was the metamorphosis process. So this kind of explains a little bit like one side of my practice, and it relates to the works that are here at the Delaplane that I was creating during COVID, and thinking about how it relates to swarms and cicadas and the feeling of being lost in a mist of lots of micro environment stuff. So thank you for letting me share a little bit about what I do.
Brian, thanks so much. It's really fascinating. What did you remind me of the term again? Did you say pictorial anthropologist?
Yeah,
is that right?
A pictorial anthropologist.
Yeah, I love the idea of you coming in and creating tools that other people can use to help you understand their culture, or understand. Am I getting that idea right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people are a destination. Like learning about people, you know, instead of a point in your career or climbing a mountain and going somewhere, like there's so much to discover within people, and so I make people my destination, and I that's where my inquiry is in my art practice.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah. I want to invite our other two speakers back up. I had a question for all of you to answer if you're interested. I love the idea how art making kind of in general, like whatever your medium is, even if it's music or poetry or any of these things, it seems like the call is to pay closer attention, right? Like the musician is saying, in no uncertain terms, the musician is saying, like, you've been hearing things all day long, but pay closer attention to melody, harmony, dissonance, all these things. The poet's doing the same thing with language, and the visual artist is saying, to a certain degree, you've been seeing all day long, but have you really been paying attention? And I love how this show, the Bug Invitational, in particular, like, it exemplifies this idea of paying attention to even the smallest things that are around us all the time. I wonder, I mean, that's maybe a lofty idea or a really general statement, but does it ring true to any of you? And do you have anything to say about that idea?
I'll jump in. I think definitely it has to do, I mean, as an artist, I mean, much of my training, either as an artist or before that, in various lifetimes before that, was about movement observation, an observation of life. You know, I mean, I can go back to the exercise that I had decades ago, where, you know, take a piece of ground that is whatever by whatever, you know, a foot by a foot, and spend an hour just looking at that piece of ground. What do you see? And, you know, journal it and see what's there. And you know, so really the training is to see in a way that other people might not. You know, I remember somebody, you know, the idea of looking up and seeing a bird sitting on a telephone pole or something, and somebody else said, "Oh, I didn't see it. I would never have seen that." You know, so I think it is important. I think that's one thing that artists do, and I think the other part that I would say with that quickly is that, you know, Eric, his work is such that I feel like he has a relationship with the bugs. I told him that already. So that, you know, sometimes it's observation and sometimes it's about relating. And I think Brian also does the relating, you know, relating to your environment, having a relationship. So it's not just you sitting back and observing, but really relating and being with whatever it is that you are, wherever you are. I ran out of words, sorry.
Yeah, I can follow that up. I totally agree with everything that Virginia just said. I get a lot of times people will say, I could have never gotten that. How'd you do that? You know, sometimes you just go out there and you just sit there and you have to observe and you have to learn about what you know, the subjects that you want to shoot. And you have to have an extraordinary amount of patience. And, you know, some of the photos that I showed of the, you know, the small little robber flies, would have never in a million years gotten those if I just didn't sit down and observe and practice and learn what to look for. So sometimes you just sit and you just look at some flowers, you look at a tree or just look at a certain spot and things start appearing. And you just have to have that kind of patience and you have to practice.
To follow up, we often overlook meaning all around us, and I'm asked the question too, like, how do you find your subject material to create? And a lot of people now, I've heard, going on the internet and just Googling an image and copying it. And part of, I hope, through my work is, no matter in what environment you're in, if you are aware and you train as an artist, you train your sensitivity to be able to capture the be able to feel with your senses a subject or something that's underlooked, that's unnoticed, as Eric said, like his family likes lifting up rocks and seeing what's under them with his kids. Like that's kind of what I imagine with my mind. I'm lifting up, shining my mind into the dark under a rock, and there's something that really captures my imagination, and I want to create about that and create a story or use it as a metaphor and expand it with my work so that it becomes larger than life. And that's I think the power of what an artist can do.
Yeah, I have actually kind of pissed someone off when they asked me, how do you come up with stuff? Because my answer at that point, I was sort of, it had been a very long day. And my answer was, how do you not come up with stuff? I mean, it's all there, it's just a matter of looking and seeing it and, relating to it. But that was one of my ruder moments.
I one thing I frequently get is, oh, if I had that lens or if I had that camera, I could do that too, or I can't do that just because, I just need that tool and then I can do that. It's like, give me a little bit more credit than that.
Yeah.
No, I love, so, I mean, the Delaplane's an art center. So one of our focuses, of course, is like providing classes and opportunities for people to engage in art making. And I really like that all three of you sort of have this, you have this way of at least, providing an opportunity for people to see beyond the artist's genius in a particular way. Brian, you're making tools that other people can handle and showing them like this material is here for you to use. Eric, you have, you're able to use lenses for even on your phone that are accessible to anybody as long as they're willing to pay attention. And Virginia, you have, you're using material even like yarn, something that is really accessible to anybody. It's not necessarily high and lofty artist material, but being able to transform those everyday objects into these art objects is really a beautiful thing. And I really like the idea that everyone can grasp onto that. There was one question in the question and answer section. It's for you specifically, Virginia. It's asking, can you show the installation in the HC library that also uses yarn covered steel pieces?
Yeah, that's the Howard County.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, the answer to that is yes, I can. So this was one of the first times that I started doing yarn, and let me go. Hang on a second. There we go. This was one of the first times that I started doing some welding and then adding the fiber to it. I mean, I had been doing basketry before this, but I really wanted to do this installation. And I have a thing about masonry nails. I like them much better than I like slugs. So they're easier to weld too. So I was welding these forms, and I started weaving them as well. And then I sort of created this entire installation. I had this idea to create an entire installation. And I went down to the Howard County Library and said, hey, I have this installation I'm working on. Can I take one day, put it up, have people talk about it, and then take it down? I will never do that again. It nearly killed me. But it was so much fun to talk to people, because what I found was that, I mean, I had one idea, going for anything unless where I knew a slug was a slug. These, I just loved the shape of it. And I was really aware of how, at that point, of how people respond emotionally to just shape, not necessarily what it is, but the shape of it. And so what surprised me that day that I was working with this was how many interpretations of these forms there were. We had, I mean, there was one where it was, things under the water, spiny things under the water, a coral reef, that kind of thing. Then there was DNA, and there was the seed pods that, you know, grab onto your pants when you're walking through the woods, and, you know, you can't get off. And my cat always comes back with a million of them on him. And, you know, stuff out in space. And so I actually ended up doing it more than once, doing this installation in a couple of different places, including Noma. And again, just so many different interpretations of what they were. And then down at MAP in Baltimore, where I had a whole corner to myself. And so it was just kind of fun, you know, that observation sometimes does really cool stuff when you want to create something, but not necessarily an exact representation, but you want that feeling of something. And so that was that installation. So I
Yeah,
hope
that's great.
answers the question.
Goodness, thanks for being ready on the fly for pulling that up for the question. That's great.
Oh, well, I saw it ahead of time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was
Gotcha. Well, I don't see any other questions that have come through, but I wanted to ask each of you if you have, what has your attention right now? Like, as you've been working, are there any upcoming projects? What are you all interested in right now moving forward?
I guess I can go first. I've had a fairly significant, until like late last year, I've had a fairly significant break from doing a lot of photography, just because busy with, you know, toddlers and newborns. But I'm planning on this year being a big year for photography. I'm really into, you know, how this macro photography on my cell phone could go this year. Again, it's like I said, the best camera is the one that you have on you. And you know, I've taken a lot of steps in this off season to get ready for that, and you know, practicing different setups that are easy and, you know, move around well. And you know, my goal is to produce a lot of photography this year on my cell phone that, you know, can be displayed and can put up in, you know, around the city and in exhibitions. So that's my goal this year, and that's what's in store.
It's been a tough year, this COVID thing, but actually what's come out of it is some brand new work with paper collage. And you know, as you mentioned earlier, Corey, about what I do with materials, and I love exploring materials. So to explore paper collage, and there's something so incredibly satisfying about sitting around at 10 o'clock at night with little pieces of paper and glue, and, you know, sticking them onto whatever substrate you're sticking them onto. I feel like a little kid. But the subject matter is a little bit more serious. I'm actually doing a lot with racism and social justice, and opening up that conversation, which needs to be opened up because we don't know how to talk about it. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, COVID has changed my whole practice, and the one good thing from the time of having everything upended is, often as an artist you work on a project and you get kind of pegged into creating works for that project. And when you have an inspiration or an idea, it goes in the sketchbook, but you're on a timeline to finish, and you have a production schedule, and the works in the moment, often you can't really be in the moment with them. They get relegated to a sketchbook, and you sometimes are in your head and you get edited around. And the ones that survive enough that you really want to create, this time has allowed me to go back and create all of these random works that aren't related to any specific project, and I get to be with the work in a way that doesn't have a time pressure. I can sit and I can think, and I can work when I'm at a more optimum state, where if you have a timeline and a production schedule, no matter how tired you are, or your everyday life impedes upon your ability to think and work, like you still have to move forward and the quality can suffer then. So these kind of extraneous works that I'm working on are personal. And I'm living on a farm now in West Virginia, where I only have contact with my mother and my grandmother. And so like my input has really been cut down significantly. So so what I've decided with this time, I wanted to go back and be with some of these works and make them come alive, and they don't have a purpose or other than to satisfy myself. And we just wait and see, like everyone else, like how is society going to slowly get back to what we used to do, or how will it change? And that's what I'm doing.
Thank you all so much. Well, doesn't look like any other questions have come through. I just want to say thank you to each of you. I know as we're all trying to navigate and figure out things with COVID, I really appreciate all of your time and bringing the work out and participating in the show. I'm excited about the show because it's poignant and also whimsical. So it's like really fun, but it also, can hit some deep places. And so it's a really fun show. Thank you all so much for being a part of things.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thanks.
Everyone did a great job. I really enjoyed your talks.
Yeah. Oh, let me say too, just so that everyone knows that's watching, the show will be up through April the 25th is when the show ends, just so you all can rush out and see it several times. So yeah, thank you all very much.
Thank you to all of the artists who spoke today and to all of the artists who are exhibiting in the Bug Invitational. While you're on our channel, check out our other videos and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified about other videos from the Delaplane. Thanks again for watching.